The stability of Europe depends in no small part on the relationship between Germany and Poland. But although relations between Warsaw and Berlin have been slowly rebuilt since the Second World War, they are on shaky ground. Today, Germany's historic leadership over Central and Western Europe is challenged by Poland's meteoric rise in recent decades and growing influence in Europe. But the ideologies of the two nations have also grown increasingly divided. Reconciliation has turned to resentment, and now the very unity of Europe hangs in the balance. Welcome to Living History. To begin our story, let's take a step back a moment and see how the relationship between Poland and Germany evolved. Nazi Germany's catastrophic invasion of Poland in 1939, resulting in the death of over 20% of the Polish population, profoundly impacted the historical and political landscape between the two nations. This event, though, wasn't the first instance of German involvement in shaping Poland's borders and political realities. Going back to the late 18th century, Poland experienced several partitions conducted by Prussia, a German kingdom, Russia, and Austria, effectively erasing Poland as an independent nation for over a century. Germany's role in these partitions, particularly Prussia's annexation of Polish territories, laid an early foundation for the complex and often strained relations between Poland and Germany. These historical events have deeply influenced Polish politics and its cautious stance towards Germany, contributing to an enduring sense of wariness and distrust that resonates in Poland's political rhetoric and policies towards its neighbor till this day. But then there was also Russia. You see, Stalin's military success during World War II lent him a strong negotiating position on dividing and shaping post-war Europe. Despite promising a free and independent Poland, Stalin maintained control of Lviv because its location held strategic military importance for the USSR and allowed the Soviet Union to expand its sphere of influence. The result? Poland found itself under communist rule for 40 years and lost nearly half of its territory in the eastern borderlands to the Soviet Union, while Germany was divided into the Soviet-controlled East and Allied-occupied West. As compensation for these territorial losses, areas of eastern Germany such as Silesia and Pomerania were ceded to Poland. Today, the borders between the two look particularly straight as a result. You see, the victorious allies, the Soviet Union, USA, and Britain, essentially drew up new borders and decided what areas of German territory Poland would receive. As a result, Germans were brutally relocated or forcefully expelled from their homes in territories that became part of Poland, and Poles living in the territories annexed by the Soviet Union were resettled in the western and northern territories that had been German. This painful chaos of relocation reopened wartime wounds for both Poles and Germans, but the Allies thought it would be good to rub some salt into those wounds as well. How, you might ask? Well, during the Potsdam Conference of 1945, the Allied powers addressed the issue of reparations. Poland, though, was not directly involved in these negotiations, which were primarily between the Soviet Union, the United States, and the United Kingdom. What's more, the Soviet Union, representing the interests of the Eastern Bloc countries including Poland, agreed to satisfy its reparations claims from its own occupation zone in Germany. In effect, this meant that Poland received a portion of its reparations indirectly through the Soviet Union, primarily in the form of industrial equipment and machinery stolen from the Soviet-occupied zone of Germany. Needless to say, Poland, having been severely impacted by the war, was bitter about this, but also had its hands tied by Moscow. That is, of course, until the fall of the Soviet Union and the reunification of Germany, which paved the way for the Foundation for Polish-German Reconciliation, which was founded by both governments in 1991, with the goal of finally addressing the issue of reparations. In fact, to put an end to this thorny issue, the German government at the time provided funds to be directly given to Polish victims of the Nazi regime. And that settled it, right? Well, not quite. For many Poles, Germany's attempt at reparations was simply not good enough. Politicians, particularly from the right of the political spectrum, have for years claimed that Germany's large-scale post-war reparations never reached Poland, going instead to the Soviet Union, who were responsible for their distribution. In fact, under the previous PIS administration in Warsaw, Poland has called for further reparations for the immense damage it suffered during the war to the sum of $1.32 trillion. As you can imagine, this has not gone down well in Berlin, or Brussels for that matter. German politicians defensively say these demands are only targeting Berlin and not Moscow, who they believe bears greater responsibility. For Germany, all financial war claims have been settled and closed. So why is Poland undoing the years of repair with Germany now? From Germany's point of view, Warsaw has been renewing a victim narrative for political leverage. Polish parliamentary elections had been set for October 2023, and Germany speculated that the ruling PIS government was using war reparations as a ploy to rally voter support. There is, however, more to the story. Following a record voter turnout, Poland's opposition parties won enough seats to oust the Law and Justice, PIS party, from power. Despite winning the largest number of votes, PIS did not have the ability to form a winning coalition. Their divisive politics made them the winning loser. Instead, the Civic Coalition, the Third Way and the Left have pledged to form a coalition government to wrench power from PIS. Now, the head of the coalition and leader of the Civic Coalition, Donald Tusk, is a former president of the EU Council and former head of the European People's Party. The legacy of the PIS Euroscepticism is expected to be replaced by a strong pro-EU agenda. But will this put an end to the topic of war reparations? Probably not. PIS's party leader Jarosław Kaczynski declared, "Poland does not fit into the German-Russian plans to rule over Europe. An independent, economically, socially, and militarily strong Poland is an obstacle for them. From a historical perspective, this is nothing new." This weaponized, historically charged language intentionally provokes Berlin and displays PIS's distinct lack of concern for maintaining a healthy relationship with Germany. And 35.4% of the Polish electorate who voted for them in the recent elections seem to agree. You see, PIS sees its nationalist values as more important than those of Berlin, who they argue dominate EU strategy, an uncomfortable reminder of Poland's historical oppression under Germany through Berlin's reach and influence in Europe. Poland's new government under Donald Tusk will likely attempt to make Poland a leading country in Central and Eastern Europe by building upon its position in key security organizations such as the EU and NATO, which means strengthening relations with Germany. But while a change in government has the potential to repair diplomatic strains, the topic of reparations will most likely resurface again. You see, Poland remains mistrustful of Germany and sees its response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine as meek and inadequate. Despite both being members of NATO, Poland sees Germany as too tied to Russia, and Germany has even been accused of undermining NATO in its reluctance to follow Eastern European NATO allies on the issue of Ukraine. So, regardless of its governing party, the key priority for Poland is maintaining its security in light of Russia's aggression on neighboring Ukraine. But differing security responses between Warsaw and Berlin risk breaking the EU into the Poland-influenced East and German-led West, and perhaps even further apart. For more on Europe, check out our next video linked here. See you there.